This video covers the IGCSE Biology Objective 6.1.11 on the 2025 CAIE syllabus to identify and explain the limiting factors of photosynthesis. So what are these limiting factors? Well, there are 5 of them that we will consider, 3 in a bit more detail than others. So number 1, we have temperature, carbon dioxide, stomata, which are the openings on the underside of the leaf, which allows oxygen to leave the plant and carbon dioxide to enter the plant, the number of chloroplasts, and light. So a limiting factor is something in the environment that when it is in short supply will restrict a life process. So the process that we're referring to here is nutrition. That is photosynthesis for the plant, making the food. And so these 5, let's see how these limiting factors play out. So the temperature can either be too low or high, and then that would limit how quickly photosynthesis would happen. If carbon dioxide concentration is too low, then that will also hinder photosynthesis from happening. If the stomata are closed, that will not allow carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into the leaf, and again, photosynthesis will not be able to take place. If there are small numbers of chloroplasts, then not enough light will be absorbed, and photosynthesis again will not be at maximum rate. And then light intensity will affect photosynthesis. If there is low light intensity, then the rate of photosynthesis will also be low. So all of these can be limiting factors depending on what the conditions are in the environment. Okay, so let's take a look at temperature. We've mentioned this before, but let's just review it a little bit. So as temperature increases, so does the rate of photosynthesis until it reaches an optimum. That is the peak of the graph. After that, as temperature continues to increase, enzymes are going to denature, which is going to slow down the rate of photosynthesis. So we see here that the rate of photosynthesis both increases and decreases depending on what's happening with temperature. And again, there's an optimum temperature for the rate of photosynthesis. Light intensity will also increase, and so does the rate of photosynthesis until a certain point. Then it plateaus. It really then doesn't matter how much more you increase light intensity. That is going to be the maximum rate for photosynthesis, indicated here with the arrow. We see a similar situation with carbon dioxide. As carbon dioxide concentration increases, so does the rate of photosynthesis until the plateau. Then no matter how much carbon dioxide concentration increases, there is going to only be that maximum rate of photosynthesis. It does not increase beyond that. So what is this telling us about these different factors? So when we look at carbon dioxide concentration and light intensity, this line tells us that something else is limiting the rate of photosynthesis, because it doesn't matter how much I increase carbon dioxide concentration or how much I increase light intensity, the rate of photosynthesis is not increasing. So something else must be limiting the reaction. So let's take a look at all the limiting factors together in these 3 experiments. So in experiment 1, that is the blue line, we're increasing the light intensity. There's a normal concentration of carbon dioxide. We can see that 0.04%. And room temperature, we have a medium rate of photosynthesis on this graph. So what this tells us is that carbon dioxide is the limiting factor. How do we know this? Well, 25 degrees Celsius is pretty much optimum temperature for a plant, so that is not hindering anything. And we said that light intensity is increasing. So therefore, something else is hindering the rate of photosynthesis. It must be carbon dioxide as the limiting factor. Experiment number 2, the green line. Again, we have an increasing light intensity. There's a normal concentration of carbon dioxide, and the temperature is low. That is 15 degrees Celsius. And we see a low rate of photosynthesis. So what does this tell us? It tells us that both carbon dioxide and temperature are limiting factors. We already know that carbon dioxide was a limiting factor in the previous experiment. and that plateau was higher. So therefore, if a plateau is lower, carbon dioxide is still a limiting factor. But now the temperature is also lower, and that's why the green line is lower on this graph. So those two both are limiting factors. All right, let's take a look at experiment 3. That's the red line. So in experiment 3, we have high light intensity, we have increased carbon dioxide at 0.4%, and we're still at room temperature, 25%. We have a very high rate of photosynthesis, but we still have a plateau. So what does this tell us? It tells us that perhaps there's another limiting factor that we're not taking into account. It could be that perhaps the stomata are closed and therefore carbon dioxide can't get in. It could be that the plant cells have low numbers of chloroplast in them, so therefore photosynthesis will not increase beyond a certain point. So this is how we look at limiting factors. If a line plateaus, there is something else that is limiting the increase in the rate of photosynthesis. So why is this important? Why do we want to think about limiting factors? Well, when we increase factors that limit photosynthesis, we can increase the rate of plant production. And this is important in the case of a greenhouse. So in a greenhouse, a farmer can control all of these different factors. So number one, they can control sunlight, whether it comes in. They can provide artificial lighting at night to continue photosynthesis during that time. They can have ventilation, which is going to allow for oxygen to leave and carbon dioxide to come in, so there's good ventilation around the plants. They can increase or decrease the carbon dioxide concentration inside that structure. They can make sure that water is being supplied at a constant rate. They can ensure that the temperature within the greenhouse stays at a certain temperature by using a heater. They can ensure that the conditions are such that it is not too humid and therefore slowing the rate of photosynthesis. So all of these conditions can be controlled in a greenhouse. So if you can get the optimum for all of the factors, for light, for carbon dioxide, for water, for heat, making sure there's ventilation, then you can increase your yield as a farmer. You have increased rate of photosynthesis. That means maximum growth, maximum flowers, maximum fruit production, and therefore you can ensure that you are having a profit all year long with your plant production.